August 6th, 1945. The world was changed forever when Little Boy paid a visit to Hiroshima, Japan. 3 days later, Fat Man went to Nagasaki. 250,000 people died on those days, and many more after that, when the age of nuclear war was born. The only two times these weapons have ever been used on humans. On the 70th anniversary of these events, a new book, Nagasaki, Life After the Nuclear War, seeks to bring some insight into what life was like for survivors of the second bomb, how it affected them the rest of their lives, and what we need to learn from those lessons. Let's welcome in the author, Susan Southard. Susan, I can only imagine how emotional it was to sit down and talk to these survivors, even finding 12, 13 survivors and being able to talk to them. That in itself is astounding.
Yes, it was very emotional. It was also very delightful. That may seem strange, but when I met them, they were in their 70s and into their early to mid 80s, and they were just amazing human beings, men and women who I really deeply appreciated getting to know. And indeed, trying to make it happen to set up the interviews was quite a lot of work.
Was it amazing, I guess, in the sense that as you got a chance to talk to them, and I read some of the stories of the 5 survivors that really made up the bulk of the book here, that they talked about many things so quietly, so matter-of-factly, when only we can imagine what it is like to see someone with the bottom of their feet completely burned off, or someone that sees a body count rising in front of them.
Yes, you know, they weren't always matter-of-fact. There were tears, there was kind of quiet emotion, there was sometimes a tinge of anger, also humor, strangely, but very tender humor. But I think that sometimes the matter-of-factness of their telling of the story is the only way they can put it out there. It's so huge and overwhelming and unimaginable that really only kind of everyday words can do it.
What did they say to you about moving forward? Because certainly here we are now, looking back at a time when the atom bomb was used, and we find ourselves now in an age when governments are considering using it again, that the fear is out there again. Did they discuss with you what their fears and their hopes were for a generation learning from their pain?
Very much so. You know, most survivors, they're known as hibakusha, don't speak about their experiences at all. They, even with their families, it's just too painful and too traumatic to recall those memories, you know, even after this long. That said, the 5 survivors whose stories I tell, and a small group of, you know, maybe about 35 other survivors in Nagasaki, have made very individual and kind of intimate, private choices to speak out publicly and tell their stories both to children in Nagasaki and to audiences across Japan and throughout the world. And their hope is that people will hear their stories and connect to the visceral experience of nuclear war, and that their stories will be a part of the movement to eliminate nuclear weapons across the globe. They want Nagasaki to be the last atomic-bombed city in history.
I got about a minute left, Susan. How did all this affect you and change you?
Oh, it changed me in so many ways. It expanded my global awareness. I had to study many topics that I wasn't schooled in. Medical, historical, military, and I now have these survivors and the city of Nagasaki's story to a limited degree because I wasn't actually there.
Did it change your thinking, though, about nuclear war?
Oh, yes. I mean, yeah, well, I don't know if I was ever an advocate of nuclear war, but I couldn't possibly have anything but an opposition to nuclear war knowing these 5 survivors.
The thing that always catches us is the atomic scientists moved the doomsday clock from 5 to 3 minutes to midnight this year, meaning we're even closer. That has to have an effect on you when you hear something like that.
It does, and I think it has an effect on the survivors. Even now, in their aging years, they so passionately have worked to try to make an impact on the reduction and ideally elimination.
It is a book worth reading simply because many people that we're speaking to probably aren't even aware of what it was like. But it was a difficult time in the life of the United States and Japan, certainly. The book is Nagasaki, Life After Nuclear War, Fascinating Tales of Those Who Survived. Susan Southard, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Coming up next, right here on The Hard Line, telling it like it is.